Y'all help me. I know it's like a near view somewhere. Got it?
Right. There you go.
Okay, thanks. All right, so the last thing we were talking about was the temperance movement kind of gets reinvigorated thanks to the social gospel. I talked about the WCTU. I talked about the Anti-Saloon League. The only person I did not talk about, this is someone who took matters into her own hands, was Carrie Nation. Okay, and she was a woman who, that's her right there with the hatchet. Okay, and she would go into saloons and start she called them hatchetations, but she did at least 30 of them. Okay, and she would go into saloons and bars where alcohol was being served and would basically attack, but not kill people, but scare them to where they'd run off. So she would throw them, run after people who had beer in their hands or whatever, and would break up using the hatchet, the glass and all that kind of stuff, and just run them out. Okay, so that's another example. Carrie Nation, she took matters into her own hands to promote temperance. Okay, and what's this is a primary document from this time period for the temperance movement. There's these beautiful women, and it says, "Lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours." That's some people are well, thank God then. Okay, so they're
Good looking group.
Very good looking group. Okay. All right, just pointing out during the Gilded Age, you'll have this, you have that wealthy top group, okay? But remember, who's really holding them up? A lot of the workers. You will start to have a little bit of a middle class emerge, okay? You will have an upper class during the Gilded Age. That's called the Nouveau Riche. You might have heard of that before, but it's the idea of people who they weren't born with money. They got money rather pretty currently, you know what I'm saying? And people that their Nouveau Riche they got money, but they're kind of tacky. They don't know how things go. Does that make sense? They're not old money, they're new money. Nouveau Riche and new money. Does that make sense? Okay, so you start to see some of that during the Gilded Age. Okay, the middle class, between 5 and 10% of people in America are now part of this middle class. Okay, and so middle class does mean usually college educated, white collar jobs, so not manual labor jobs. That's blue collar jobs. Okay, so just think middle class, white collar jobs, all at college educated. That working class, that is still going to be a good chunk. 2/3 of the workforce will be those down here, the working class. Okay, so basically from this, just note that the middle class is what's really important. There is a middle class that is really going to start to emerge. Okay, another thing during this is probably another example of product of the social gospel movement, is that there will be, there's a guy, Comstock, who's a congressman. He creates these laws that are going to go against these immoral things. Okay, now things that are contraceptives would be birth control, but we're not talking about birth control pills. We're just talking about information on how to prevent pregnancy. Okay, obscenity. So what clearly some things are that's obscene. But want to point out during this time, just telling women that here's how you can avoid being pregnant, just that alone was obscene, and people were arrested. Okay, there were women who were went out and had these pamphlets of look, here's how things work, whatever, and they were arrested for just providing that information. Okay, so just note what's obscene today, it was even things that we would not say is obscene today were definitely obscene during this time. Don't worry about that part, it's nothing to. During the Gilded Age, we know the cult of domesticity is still alive. Okay, the women's role. Okay, so upper middle class women. Okay, they're probably not working, and so they will have some time to be that mother to society as well and fix society. So a lot of those middle class, upper level, higher classes, they're going to really have some time to give back and try to really get involved in those reforms. Okay, we talked about the Gibson girl in chapter 18 already. There, you know, the new woman of the Gilded Age. I think 71% during the Gilded Age, 71% of colleges will now start to accept women into school. So that's another change. Okay. Yes, and let's see. Okay. Want to point out, because of the Gilded Age and that second industrial revolution, more women will now be in the workforce more than ever. Think about it. You have the typewriter, you have telegraph, you have phones, and a lot of women are going to now take jobs being like secretaries. Secretaries didn't really exist until the Gilded Age when you had the typewriter, or like phone operation, operators where you connect, okay, and telegraph transcribers, okay. So that's a new opportunity for women for jobs, okay. And then if it wasn't like a secretary, okay, bookkeeper kind of thing, it usually were women like in textile industries, food processing, things that still kind of involve the women's role, even if it's a factory. Like they're making clothes, well, that's a woman's job kind of thing, okay. Okay, academics, don't worry too much on this. That mandatory education, most states by this time, not really in the South, they're going to have that mandatory education. Like you have to go to school if you're a certain age, okay? During the Gilded Age, we start to see kindergartens. Remember, that's a German thing that we will take, okay? And so the literature will get higher. I already told you that there will be more colleges during the Gilded Age. 3 reasons. One, remember that Moral Land Grant Act during the Civil War, which said if they sold land, that land would fund new colleges. There's that. Also, philanthropists like Carnegie and Rockefeller. Rockefeller created University of Chicago, like these philanthropists, like Vanderbilt. They gave back through new universities. And then 3, new universities and colleges will be created for places strictly just for women. So more opportunities for people because there will be more colleges. Okay. Okay, leisure time and amusement. Okay, we know about minstrel shows when we talked about blackface. Okay, well, after the Civil War, there'll be kind of like a new type of variety show, if you will, that's going to replace minstrel shows, and that's going to be called vaudeville. And vaudeville will be big even into the 1920s. Okay. Vaudeville, think of it as like almost like little circus acts, but it's not a circus. Okay, I'll show you some stuff tomorrow. It's like a 3-minute clip of vaudeville stuff, but please note that during the Gilded Age, a very, very, very like popular pastime for leisure would be going to vaudeville shows. Okay, and I'll show you some examples of those tomorrow.
Is that what the book is?
Yes, yes, vaudeville definitely would probably be that blank. Okay, we talked about P.T. Barnum and the, Barnum and Bailey and stuff. Thanks to the railroads now, the circus can go around the nation instead of you going to that one place. Now they can travel. Okay, bicycles will be really big during this time. Sports. Okay, so we will get college sports, which eventually will make it to professional sports. Okay, for instance, the first college, like the first football game was a college football game in 1869. Does anyone know? The one college with an R. Yep. There you go. There you go. Okay, you're getting there. Yeah. And then Princeton, 1869. Okay. And again, that was college. Then in 1891, you'll have the first college basketball game. Okay. In 1898 is when you have the first professional basketball league. Okay. So you see, what's going to happen is thanks to electricity, okay, people will have more time to do stuff because it's like labor-saving devices, And also in college, they're going to like scale back on the number of required courses and so colleges will have a little bit more free time, so meaning leisure time, hence what are they going to do for recreation? Sports. That's where we get basketball, baseball, okay? It starts out in college, and then it makes its way to the professional, okay? These types of sports were considered like bachelor sports, it's like men played these, and usually they're like single men who had time to play this because they didn't have children or they didn't have a wife. Women would play like croquet and tennis. Okay. And when it came to like African Americans, Jim Crow was alive and well, so there'd be different leagues. You had segregation in your your baseball and all that kind of stuff as well. Let's see. And then like the rich, they tended to play polo or went yachting for like their leisure and recreation. Okay. So interesting stuff there. Okay. Let's see. Oh, the announcements are about to happen. So I think the last thing we got to talk about is something called yellow journalism. Okay. There are two yellow journalists, William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. You've heard of the Pulitzer Prize. Okay. And long story short, these are two of the top leading newspapers. I'm going to finish in a second after announcements.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to finish up after the announcements.
Men in high school.
Okay. One thing I want to point out that I have a quizzes I created, so that will help you out too. We'll review a little bit before the quiz. We'll go straight to the quiz. But just note, newspapers have been around since before the Civil War in America. Okay, but the first like person to have over 1 million in circulation will be William Randolph Hearst. Okay, and what's going to happen, okay, William Randolph Hearst and then Joseph Pulitzer, that's actually an error there. Don't worry about that. Just note that the two main journalists will be William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. And think about it, when you only really have two, that's going to make the rivalry even more, okay? And there's this cartoon called The Yellow Kid, which was about like a silly Chinese immigrant, okay? And one of the cartoonists was employed by Hearst, and he was like, everyone loved the Yellow Kid cartoon. Well, then Pulitzer secretly convinced the Yellow Kid cartoonist to work for Pulitzer. So that's what started that rivalry, hence yellow journalism after the Yellow Kid. okay? And they sensationalize. You've heard like National Enquirer, okay? That means sensationalism, extremely exaggerated. It's all about selling papers, okay? So a lot of things were really blown out of proportion, but again, it's to sell papers, okay? And so, for instance, a huge reason, like I'd say the number one reason we get involved in the Spanish-American War was because of Pulitzer and Hearst said the Spanish blew up the USS Maine when that did not happen. Okay, so that just shows you how like impactful the media is, that we will declare war because of something the yellow journalists did. But that just shows you, I mean, these are the top 2 newspapers in the nation at the time. And they're called, when you think of yellow journalism, that means sensationalized news. Okay, but now you know why it's yellow. It's after the yellow kid. Okay, last thing that could be on your quiz, ragtime. It's a new type of music. Okay, Scott Joplin is the king of ragtime. I'll talk about him more, but ragtime is a new type of music. Eventually, ragtime will go into like what's jazz of the 1920s. But think a lot of African American music, funky like syncopated rhythms. But we'll listen to some things tomorrow for ragtime, and you're familiar with the stuff. You just might not have known it was called ragtime.